Welcome to Season 5 of Education for Love and Wisdom. Nathan Braze, great to see you again.
Yes, awesome to be here.
For those who are joining us for the first time, my name is Jeff Hittenberger. I serve as Dean of the School of Education here at Vanguard University. This season, we're focusing on love, wisdom, and belonging. How do we embrace and empower children, young people, and adults with disabilities, both in schools and in faith communities? And in fact, we're writing a book on that very topic that's going to be coming out this year.
So exciting. And I'm really thrilled to see the work that's going into this book and waiting for a wonderful, wonderful product to come out soon. As we know, we had a wonderful symposium in June of last year, the Disability Symposium hosted right here at Vanguard University. At this symposium, we had over 130 participants. And in the last episode, we covered the first part of a plenary session that was all about inclusion in school settings. How do we see that come into reality? And some folks shared some really wonderful insights and their rich personal experiences as well that aligned with that idea. This now is part 2. So we're going to get into that next. Let's rejoin you, Dr. Jeff Hittenberger, in the second part of this plenary session.
Before we leave for that, Nathan,
Yes.
let's mention that this Disability Symposium is an annual event. So
Thank
in
you.
June, we will be having another Disability Symposium.
That's right.
Doesn't matter what June you're listening, what year you're listening to this, in June, there will be an annual Disability Symposium at Vanguard University. We'd love to have you join us. Now off we go to the second half of the plenary panel.
Thank you so much. Yes, we'll see you in June.
And Joey, your answer, in a sense, anticipated kind of where we go from here, and that is thinking about the settings in which our participants today are living and working. What would be a word of counsel that you would give to our gathered community here about advancing this vision of inclusion that you've shared, whether they're in faith communities or whether they're in preschools, elementary, high schools, colleges, community organizations, families? What are some words of counsel that you might give? And let's start with Ludmila.
Well, indeed, that was perfectly in line with what I was going to say, just perfectly anticipating the point that inclusion is not quick and easy. And very often we're tempted to kind of start, okay, so here we are, let's maybe bring someone who is the most similar to us. So let's address the easiest and, quotes. There's no such thing as easy inclusion, but something that appears to us, let's do that because we can do it quickly first. And then what happens is that many people end up never being included because either there's more than one factor, as in the previous examples, so you're going to have someone who has maybe multiple disabilities, or maybe disability plus social economic class plus race plus other intersectionalities that end up being multiply marginalized. So the answer to that is the model that I prefer, which is inclusion from the margin. When you address the hardest and the most complicated, or at least what seems to be the most complicated first, it kind of takes care of everything. And if you try to think of people who are multiply marginalized and most vulnerable and have fewest resources to deal with exclusion, if you take care of all of those barriers, then you take care of barriers that many other people experience. So that's kind of why I talk about canaries in coal mines, because it's actually a true story that they have been used to detect toxic gases, because canary is more sensitive by design because it processes oxygen on inhale and exhale, but it also makes it more vulnerable before humans. And then they would evacuate and they would give canaries oxygen. They actually had lethal oxygen tanks for them. But if you create air that's good enough for canaries, the minors are taken care of. So if you take care of the most vulnerable, of the marginalized, and create systems that are flexible enough, who, let's say, is twice exceptional learner with additional, whether physical disability or other aspects of marginalization. If you create a system that is flexible enough and participatory enough for that individual, then people who experience some of those barriers, not all of those, but some of those barriers, are also taken care of if we eliminate all those multiple barriers.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Ludmila. Joanne.
Thank you for the perfect segue for what I was going to share, which is universal design for learning is a concept that actually came out of universal design for architecture and making spaces accessible, thinking about people on the margins, kids, adults who have maybe more significant disabilities or impairments. And in terms of teaching in the schools, I mean, the principle applies everywhere, exactly like what you're saying, Dr. Proslova, that if you think about the people who may experience the most barriers and you can address those barriers from the beginning, then the chances are, as thinking about an example like a lesson plan for something specific with teaching, thinking about how I can ensure that all of my students are participating, can engage, can respond, can, opportunities to connect with their peers. Chances are that I'm addressing needs that other students may have that may not necessarily be identified with an official IEP or disability, but also thinking about students who need more challenge, and not always assuming that, I think this goes back to having, presuming competence is something I learned with Dr. Hume Dawson through my studies with him at Chapman. And it's thinking about the assets that all of us have. We all have gifts and talents, and we all bring something to the table. And so when you know your students and you know their strengths and you can take the time, it is going to require some, extra effort on your part. I'm thinking in education context, but also in any context to do the extra work to make spaces more welcoming, more inclusive, more barrier-free. But like thinking of the end result, envisioning for that first, and what a wonderful place that you've created, because you know that everyone's going to be able to participate and fully engaged. So universal design for learning.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Joanne. Taylor and Kara?
Yeah, we're just segueing because this is working out very well.
The segue continues.
Yeah, because I actually am going to piggyback on yours as well, because one of the things that I'm always saying with Kara is like, don't judge a book by its cover. And I think that there's a lot of because there are things that she isn't able to do. Sometimes, even as her sister over the years, I've thought, oh, well, what else can we really learn how to do? And even in the last few years, now that you're in your 40s, sorry, I revealed it. She's like, take the mic away. Yeah. There's been things that we've learned, even in the last couple of years, that she's capable of that I just didn't know. And just kind of realizing that even though there might be limits, just like Joanne said, there's also so many things we don't know that they could be capable of. And like for her, even though she can't do certain things, I'm learning more and more how she loves athletic things, being sporty, being out and walking and doing all these sorry, I'm walking, you're being pushed. But there's just a lot of different things that she's capable of. And I think it works the same way for so many people who, might not be able to speak, but they can write poetry, or, just have all these amazing gifts that we just need to take the time to learn about. And I think that it is so important to recognize that nobody can be put in a box. And even when you have a diagnosis of a disability, there's still so much more to each person than we think. And it's just a matter of taking the time to learn, like you were saying, and just really, giving them the chance to show what they're capable of. because we all have so many things, even with, my two colleagues on the side over here who, mentioned that they were, limited, but still were capable of so much more than what people thought. And it's just a matter of giving them the chance to show that. And there's amazing people out there that can do amazing things if we just give them the chance. And I think that's really important to note.
Thank you so much. Rodney, some words of counsel.
I will say love boldly, love courageously, and if I could use Bell Hooks' phrase here, love radically. When Dr. Bell Hooks, who was a great feminist, talked about intentional love, for her, intentional love was about action. Love was not just about feelings, right? And love that is based on action is based on intention, is based on choice, is based on will. And for me, when I think of that will or choice, is not just about including me, but making sure that I belong as well. And belonging means that I have an opportunity to participate fully. You give me an opportunity to share my own experiences as well. You give me an opportunity to be a leader, right? You give me an opportunity to have friends, to date, to get married, to have a family if I choose to, right? An opportunity to help change the world, because I can do that too. And people with disabilities are as capable and can do that too.
Thank you so much. Joey.
I think they covered it all. No. For me, a word of counsel, right? All right. So for me, I think there's a lot of different ways to put it, but the story of inclusion, for anybody who's been excluded, or for anybody advocating for people who've been excluded, and this is simplistic language I'm going to use here, so it's not to offend or anything, but to me, it's a story of square pegs and round holes, and everybody thinks the issue is the peg, but the peg is not the issue. Change the hole, right? And that's hard to do. It's a lot easier to take a peg and put it on the grinding stone and round it out, and we're going to get it in there. It's going to fit, right? And if it doesn't, we'll put it in the portable at the back of the campus or whatever form of exclusion we're talking about, right? And so that is to say that when you're thinking about the square pegs and the round holes, you have to frame, like Dr. Hume Dawson said, the intentionality part of it, the thinking outside of the box part of it that Taylor mentioned. You have to be willing to look at perceived problems or issues or obstacles through another lens. Inclusion is collaborative work, right? Again, it's hard work. And if it's not implemented correctly, it can fall flat. People get burned out and they revert back to, not inclusive practices. And so I think for me, it's really just for everybody to consider another perspective when you face these issues. Get creative. Don't be afraid to try something and it doesn't work, because I think the latest cognitive, science and brain research tells us we learn more from failing than success, right? And so for me, at least, as a teacher, I've tried multiple different ways to get creative with inclusion, and not all of them have worked, but I've learned from all of those situations, and they've all kind of shaped the approach that I take when I'm trying to have my form meet my function, which is quality, inclusivity, and re-looking at what the actual objective is. And the last point on that, resource scarcity. a lot of times inclusion, when you're actually going to do it correctly, like co-teaching, that's so much harder to plan co-teaching than it is to just show up as an individual teacher who knows their content. You're going to like throw down a lesson and teach, and it's great. When you're having to do it with another adult who has a different perspective and a different set of specialist skills, it takes more time, right? And so, but then that ed specialist or that sped paraeducator, again, I'm coming from the classroom perspective, you don't have enough of them. So you want to just like copy and paste them so you can have them everywhere, right? Resource scarcity is one of the biggest barriers. So if you're in a position of influence or you're in a position to make those kind of decisions, make sure that you have the resources for inclusion. Because when you think boldly and love boldly and you're thinking outside the box and you want to implement things like UDL or whatever it is, you need resources. And I can't tell you how many times we've just been like, we don't have enough bodies to support this model because society is not built like that. And so we have to be the purveyors of hope there and get that message out there.
Thank you so much, Joey. Well, we have about 10 minutes left, and I've got one more question for the panel. You're probably already feeling like, oh my, I've gotten so much already. I need to talk about this with somebody, and you're going to have that opportunity. We're going from here to breakout sessions where you'll have the opportunity to process some of the things we've heard and get new guidance from a group of amazing presenters. And then this afternoon, we have this table discussions where you'll be able to process this and think about, okay, how do I take this into my community, into my context, and put it into practice? So there'll be lots of opportunities for that today, as well as in your informal conversations around the table. So panelists, so much rich stuff so far. This is going to be kind of a lightning round. And I'm going to ask each of you to offer one resource that you think has been especially helpful to you and would be potentially helpful to our participants. And don't be shy about recommending your own thing. I've already kind of pumped up the canary code, but feel free to have it be something that you've created or something that you've used that has been helpful to you. And let's start down on the other end of the table this time. Joey, would you start with a resource that you have found helpful that you think would be helpful to others?
So I haven't necessarily created anything, so I don't have like a book or anything to tell you. But I would just say that reaching out to people with the lived experience, it's not to say that if you don't feel that you haven't experienced it, that you don't have something to say. Like, I think you learn through dialogue, right? Asking questions, listening to answers, clarifying questions and such. But we're all living in a time right now that we're all very fortunate to be in education, because there's never been a time, at least over, you could say decade, half decade, right? There's been a lot of change. There's been a lot of, I think we use the word pivoting a lot now. There's been a lot of unprecedented sort of decisions. School board meetings are not boring anymore. And so I think for me, it really is just something that's resonated deeply with me is the Vanguard. They've developed this motto of love and wisdom. And so when I was thinking about coming here today, education definitely connects us all, but it's also this notion of love and wisdom. And I feel right now that I don't want to say there's like a relative dearth of love and wisdom, because I know there's a ton of it out there, but resource scarcity with ever increasing demands and resources, kind of like inflation, right? Like costs go up, but wages are stagnant. A lot of time demands go up in education and resources are stagnant. And it becomes difficult because we're trying to meet the need of kids. I was at a graduation for a high schooler the other day who started high school in 2020. And I pulled her to the side and told her how proud I was of her, because what a way to finish middle school and to go into high school. Super difficult, right? And granted, we did everything we needed to do at the time, but now we're looking at it and we're seeing kids who have navigated these obstacles, and a lot of the resources are resetting. So try to center yourself on the love and wisdom, and make yourself present. Giving a voice to the voiceless, all the good things that we can say. But I think most importantly, just coming to things like this, right? Being present. You have to be present to win. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Joey. Rodney, resource.
I really want to emphasize this point that Joey talked about. In disability studies, we say nothing about us without us. Meaning that if we're going to study disability, if we want to understand disabled people, then we need their expertise of their lived experiences, right? And we should not take that for granted. One of the great people in the disability rights movement pointed out that in the 1920s or earlier, when they institutionalized disabled people, he said, it is possible that these people had good intentions, but they never asked us really what we wanted, right? And so making sure you communicate, you befriend, you reach out and seek the expertise of these people is really essential. The other thing I do in my classes at Cal Poly, whenever I teach disability studies, is websites about disability, or nonprofit organizations, or organizations that work with people with disabilities or do research. One, for example, that I can think of is the Kresge Foundation, that talks a lot about inclusion and how inclusion works. So those are definitely excellent resources as well. And then, of course, there are tons and tons of books out there. And one of the book that I can think about is Disability Visibility by Alice Wong. Some of you might have already read that. But lots of books out there. Educate yourself, and you'll be amazed at the richness of disability history, disability knowledge, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rodney. Taylor and Kara, resource?
Yeah, so to kind of piggyback on what Joey and Rodney were saying, spending time with people and really taking the time to get to know them better really does make a huge difference on understanding what's needed. And like some of the resources that I wanted to mention was opportunities to do that. So like to volunteer in different ways or become a part of different ways. Like, for example, we've gone to camps with Johnny and Friends, which is an amazing organization that helps distribute wheelchairs all around the world. And they have camps every summer. There's camps. Lighthouse is another great, I know you like that one, great place that has camps over the summer and clubs that they do. And there's just so many different opportunities to volunteer. And I really think that's like the best opportunity to get to know people who have disabilities, or families who have people in their family with disabilities, and really get the chance to understand them from a more human perspective, rather than even though books and websites and all those things are also great resources, the more you get to know the people, the more you really get the opportunity to understand. And so yeah, I mean, if you want any more, find me. I've got lots of different volunteer things that we've been a part of or participated in, but it's always a beautiful thing to watch people learn and grow, even for the volunteers to just get to spend time with amazing people like Kara. So, yeah.
Thanks, Taylor and Kara. Joanne, resource.
I will piggyback a bit too, Taylor. Parents and families are the resource that came to mind for me. Especially in the school setting, through the IEP process and partnering together with parents and families. I think in my own career, going the extra mile to get parent input, especially knowing that, parents and families love their children and they're the ones who are the experts aside from the person themselves, and involving them in the process. Thinking even just of Dr. Hume Dawson's story and the advocacy from his mother, and just having empathy for knowing that, for some families and parents, it's been a battle, and it's been a battle for a long time. And I think if we can just have that posture of empathy, and a phrase that has stuck with me in my own learning too has been thinking about disability as an open minority. So disability is it will touch your life at some point in your life if it hasn't already, through other family members, through an acquired disability for yourself, through aging, and even my own father now has a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, so I'm experiencing it a bit that way. But yeah, I think the more that we can do in going that extra mile to really partner with our parents and families, the better off we will be.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Ludmila, you have the last word, final resource.
Thank you. The most priceless is lived experience, as really everyone here said. And obviously, I'm thankful to Jeff for already plugging my book, The Canary Code, which is specific to the workplace and its managers, HR, but anyone really can benefit from it. But another one that you don't have to pay for at all, even though my book is not expensive. I do have also all kinds of free resources, one of which is my Psychology Today blog, which is called Positively Different. And there's no paywall there. And it's a little bit of everything. The last two articles are on adulting while autistic and sources of autistic joy. But there's also teaching while neurodivergent, and disability, and general well-being for anyone. So just a little bit of everything, and just free samples of various different things.
Thank you so much, Ludmila. Well, let's thank this amazing panel.
Education for Love and Wisdom is produced by the School of Education at Vanguard University of Southern California. Our goal is to equip teachers to educate with love and wisdom, especially in these complicated times. If you'd like to learn more about our education programs, please visit us online at www.vanguard.edu and search for School of Education. If you'd like to leave us a comment, a question, or you have thoughts to share, feel free to email us at loveandwisdom@vanguard.edu. That's love and wisdom with no spaces at vanguard.edu, and leave us a message. A special thank you to all who have contributed to this episode, and a thank you to you, our listeners, for joining us on this episode of the Education for Love and Wisdom podcast.